Hey, and welcome to another one of the Tech Geeks videos. Today we're going to have a look at a little bit more of a deep dive into the Ubiquiti UNAS Pro, so the Unified Network Attached Storage device. Yes, this is very similar, if not identical, to the structure of the UNVR Pro. So it does make it a little bit easier to actually have a look at what this is. We're going to give a thing of actually setting up, building some of the RAID, sharing drives and everything else like that. But I just want to show you a little bit around the hardware. Now, we're recording this in November 2024. It's very interesting. The build date of the units that we've received to send out to customers are around about July, August 2023. So we've got two lines of thought. Was this product held, which we know that has been held for a while, often with Ubiquiti? Has it been held for release, or is it the build date of the UNVR? I don't know the answer to that. It's just a little bit intriguing. So what have we got? We have got 7 bays. Here we have got 7 bays for hard drives. We have got a small LCD screen up this end. We have got a 10 gig SFP port up here with a 1 gig Ethernet port. Our air intakes across the top there. These drive bays I'll show you in a moment will take 2.5 and 3.5 inch hard drives. I've not put the rack ears on. Where's that? There we go. I've not put the rack ears on, but those screw in there. And then on the back we've got our XPEL air fans. We've got an RPS slot here if you use a redundant power supply from Ubiquiti. Remember, this is not a UPS. It takes 2 independent power supplies in case one physically fails. And then over this end here, we've got our IEC connector. And if you've got the locking cable, then that will lock that into place. So let me just switch that around here for you. We've got our drive bays here. So let me just take one of those bays out and actually show you here. So you've got a different options there of how to mount that. Oh, there we go. A different size hard drive in there. We've got customers again that have put 22 terabyte hard drives in these, so plenty of storage. We're actually going to use these. We're going to actually use the Iron Wolf Seagate NAS drives. Now look, this is your choice, and everybody's going to say, oh, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use this. Part of having a network of storage device is you've got to think about, what is this? Is this doing media streaming? Is this doing file serving? In my instance, I'm mainly doing file serving, so I don't need super consistent high-end hard drives. I've chosen these because I actually get a good speed from them, these Seagate Iron Wolves, but they're also a good price. But you may have used Western Digital Reds, Plus or Pros. That's up to you. The main thing is you choose a solution or drive set that works for you. So let's head on over. We're going to get some of these drives installed in here. And then from there, we will start some of the configuration, and hopefully this will be a useful video for you. So let's start by installing some hard drives in here. We can have up to 7 hard drives. As we build the RAID, it will consume a different number of drives. You put 1 in there, you're going to get the storage volume that it has. So we're actually using, like I said previously, we're going to be using these Iron Wolf Seagate drives. This is an 8 terabyte. If I put 1 drive in here, I'm going to have 8 terabytes of usable space. If I put 2 in here, this device is now going to put those into RAID, a RAID 10, so it's going to do a mirror. So even though I'm going to have 2 8 terabyte drives in, I'm going to end up with just 8 terabytes of usable space, because one of those, both drives, one will be the read-write and one will be essentially creating the mirror on there. And so as a result, I will still only have 8 terabytes of space. If I now put 3 hard drives in there, it's going to move to RAID 5. And the simple rule of thumb is in RAID 5, we just use 1 amount of hard drive space. So if I've got 3 lots of 8 terabyte drives, then as a result, I will have 16 terabytes of usable space. So let's go and get the first hard drive installed. All right, so let's install the first hard drive. So you can see they're labeled across the top here, 1, 2, 3, and then we carry on with 4, 5, 6, 7 across there. So let's take the drive bay out. If you've not seen these before, they do have diagrams in here of how, let me just try and see if I can get that right in the camera angle there for you, to fit a 3.5 inch or a 2.5 inch. Main thing is to take your drive here and get these connectors angled towards the back of the tray. It should be pretty simple to just actually put the device into the tray. You often lean it on one side first and then clamp it down into place, and you can see that is now sitting quite contently into the tray. So now if I just bring that around so you can still see it in the camera, if I bring that into place, I can now simply and easily clip lock that back into place. And we're just going to repeat that along our set of drives here. So again, looking at the connector towards the back, linking in on one side, clamping down into place, and then I can easily add it back here into the drive. Move this the other way so you can again see what I'm doing. As I remember where I am, there we go, take that one out, and again just clamp this into place so that connectors are pointing to the back. It will snap down into place, there we go, and then we can just quickly put that in. So I've done drive 1, drive 2 and 3, which I'm going to have a RAID 5 setup. RAID 5, like I said, that is going to give us 16 terabytes of usable space, and any one of those hard drives can actually fail and it will continue to run on without any loss of data. So now it's probably time to power it up and jump onto the computer and start some of the configuration.
You'll probably find it simpler for the initial configuration to actually use your phone with the Unifi app installed on it. It will find this as a device and allow you to just step through the simple processes of literally getting this configured, add it to your account. Remember, you need to be signed into your unifi.ui.com account and use the Unifi Network app, and then just follow this process through. It'll ask you about the storage protection you want, and then from there you might just choose basic storage, which is what I've done because of the number of drives. It will then step you through while it just configures, updates the latest firmware, and adds it to your account so you can see it in Site Manager. So we're just going to let this run through the last bits, and you can see it's now complete. Okay, so having just followed through that very basic setup, and as you can see, you can't really do much more on the in the app like that. Then we've just waiting for this console. It took about 6 or 7 minutes for the console to finish doing whatever it was doing on here. So we're now just going to log in, have our little first looks around. We obviously set this up as RAID 5, so we've got 3 8 terabyte drives, 2 of which are usable storage, so we get around about 16 terabytes of raw. That probably won't be quite that once everything's done. So let's just accept those settings, and we're here now in here, and we can actually see everything that is going on. Now I'd imagine that the RAID will be off and building now. We can see a whole bunch of the information here on the shares, see who's actually logged in. So I just want to have a little look and see what's going on with inside here to start with before we start creating any shares or anything else. So let's have just a quick wander through these screens. This is the first time I've actually logged in, so I'm going to do this and try and see what we can gather as we go along. So let's just have a little look on here. Obviously we can see the version number we're running. We can see system performance and memory utilization. We can manage the storage, so we're going to get to that when we get to settings in the control plane, so that's all good there. And I think everything there is probably all that I wanted to know. I'm not sure whether when you click on this it gives you any information. No, it doesn't. At the moment I've connected this to the gigabit Ethernet port. Once it goes into the rack, then I'm going to add this with its 10 gig interface and be able to get going from there. All files, this will just be the basics that are in there at the moment, which will probably be just me as a user, and we'll explore that again in a moment. And it looks like we've got a trash where everything is stored as well. So logs should hopefully show us a little bit more maybe that's going on. Storage, I'm not sure whether it will show us what's actually running or happening with inside there. It doesn't seem to give us a lot at the moment, but it has only just got going. So let's have a little look in the control plane or the main settings here. So I'm really interested probably at the moment in the actual drives and everything that goes with this. We'll see if anything's clickable on this. It looks like there might be some updates around, so we can have a look at those in a moment. Integrations, monitoring, all the sort of similar types of stuff. The backups, this is the config backups, not a backup of the data that's on there. Storage, here we go. So this is what we wanted to see. So it looks like it's going to take another 10 hours and 26 minutes or a little bit more to build that whole array. That's just 16 terabytes. Obviously, this now depends on your drive speed and everything else. I've chosen, like I said, the Iron Wolf drives. Here and there 7,200, so they should be not too bad on the actual speed that I need to build. But for the RAID to fully build, that is going to take a little while in total. The console in here, so again we've got all of our basic settings, what we're actually going to use. Just quickly going to go down here. I think everything else is set as I need it to. Quite happy with all of those bits. Got the right time zone and everything else. Push notifications. Do I want some alerts here of things that maybe are useful? And we can maybe look at those in due course as well. So backups here, we'll cover a little bit later once everything's built and running. Snapshots, shared links, services we will have a look at a little bit more in a moment, and push notifications, again, where we can keep a track of everything that's going on. So what I'd really wanted to do was just get this up into the right place and running. I'm quite content to leave this for a while. You can see here that this is our main user that has the owner permissions. I would imagine this is very much similar to a normal Ubiquiti, so we can create a local user as well. So we'll go through doing those basic steps very shortly and what they relate to. But let's go and leave this now for that RAID to build, and then we're going to come back and start some actual configuration of this. Okay, so I left the drives to rebuild. It did certainly take over 10 hours. I think it was about 12 or 13 hours. I was hoping that the final value would be shown here in system log, but there isn't actually any information of that, which is a bit of a shame, but that's okay. I'm not going to bust a gut about that too much. Obviously, just the thing, you can still use the drives while they're rebuilding. They'll just be slower. That's all that is actually involved there. So I wasn't really too worried about that bit. And now I'm sort of thinking, where do I actually start with this? Because normally there's a whole lot of config, but really now this is about creating shares and file stores and actually getting data actually moving. So I think what we'll do is we're just going to start going through the settings here so that we just know what we've got. And then we'll look at how a user has been created, and then maybe create a share, and then we'll start copying some data across. So just before I head on to this, let me just grab you here's some footage that I did on my phone earlier. I really just wanted to show you some of the things that you actually can get on the small LCD screen, along with the noise level of the fans as well. So there's a small LCD screen on the device which can help us get some basic statistics. So if we start with the main menu in top left hand corner, when I can get my thumb to click on it correctly, it'll show you which drive bays have got drives installed in them, and then we can go into those drive bays and actually have a little bit more information: the size of the drive, the temperature, sector count, and it'll just scroll through all the drives. Where we don't have a drive installed, you'll see that it shows it as no disk. If we go back to the main menu, you can just scroll back there. We can then choose the top right menu, which gives us more statistics. Our read-write speed of happening on the hard drives, useful if you're doing big copies or you don't want to just immediately see this in the dashboard. Our memory and our CPU usage. Then obviously our throughput to the rest of the network, the temperature of the device as well. Looking on information, this is more a broad brushstroke. So what's our total storage, the IP address, are both ports connected, the uptime of the device, the motherboard revision, and the firmware that's currently running on the device itself. Then we can change the brightness and the color of the LCD panel here, and we can regulate the fan speeds if we want to. I've got a meter running here, so it generally are running pretty quiet. If we push them up here to almost 100%, if I can get it there. The only time I've actually seen it running at 100%, or certainly a lot noisier, was when I was expanding the array, I'd put another drive in and it was spreading the data across all the drives. Then it was running fairly noisy for about the day it was doing that expansion. Generally, it's only at a few percent and hardly noticeable. All right, so let's start here. Let's start obviously at the dashboard. The dashboard we're quite comfortable with at this moment in time. We've really not got very much here to look at. These will be our key pieces of information to use later on. And we may see if we can make this publicly available across the internet as well, directly for other people, but we'll see where we get to in the video. So let's just hand our way through settings. And I'm just going to start at the control plane. And the control plane is where we actually see essentially the UniFi OS, so the actual operating system that the UNAS, not UNVR, UNAS is actually running, and then the version of the drive or UniFi Drive that's running here, and whether there's any updates to go on. Our integrations, if we want to do some monitoring on this, if you're using SNMP, if you're connecting this into some other monitoring, then this might be a useful section for you. Backups, like we alluded to earlier, these are really just about the configuration. So it's going to be about the shared drives and everything. It's not going to be backups of your data. So this is worthwhile doing to at least you get regular backups of the config that you've done on here. Storage, so this shows us what's actually going on, same as we could see it on our little screen that I showed you a moment ago, but you can actually see this in here. So we can see ultimately we've got 3 hard drives in here. We can see the type of hard drives in here. It's giving us the idea of the lifespan that's on here, the RPM, the size of them. And then as a result, it's giving us an idea of the size and space. If this is similar, which I imagine it is, to something like a UNVR or a UNVR Pro, when you add another drive in, then again, you can, as you go along, expand the capacity. So this will be more useful as we start to fill this up. The console itself, this is the actual device. So I'm going to give this a name. So I know a little bit more about it. I'm in Australia, so I'm going to set this up. My screen, remember you can put this to sleep if you want to as well. I want to use Ubiquiti's mail server in case I need to get things sent out for this. Certificates, this is interesting. Let's have a look. So this is going to be if you actually have a certificate that you can generate. So you're going to generate a certificate, upload it to this. This is if you're going to have this accessible from the internet and you want people to be able to get to HTTPS and a domain name, what we call a fully qualified domain name, and it not put up that alarm that says, hey, this site might not be secure. So this is probably really good. You could probably create one using Let's Encrypt as a possibility to be able to put there, or you can just buy a $30 one and add it in. We may have a look at that if we get a chance. If you want to enable SSH, I often quite like to enable that. It gives me a way back in again, but do remember that you don't want to make that accessible to the internet if you choose that as well. Don't want to factory reset it. About the console, I presume, here we go. It's pretty much what we've seen on the other screen, but giving us an idea of the load, what actual internal memory it has, what internal storage it has. So you can see it's got about 25 gig of internal storage for all its settings and everything, and the user for that. And then just down here, I've just got my options here. Show me the whether I want to have this on DHCP or a static IP address. And I probably will set this to be a static IP address in due course. But my preference for setting this as a static IP address is I normally like to do that in DHCP, in the DHCP server. So we run an EFG here, an Enterprise Fortress Gateway. So I will probably set that IP address in there, and I may flick over and show you that in a moment. So I'm just going to apply the changes that we have just created on there. And now I'm just going to look through our push notifications. So I'm not really too worried of being alerted if I've got a new drive in. Probably not really bothered if it's incompatible, because I'm probably going to be doing something if I'm doing it, I'll know what's happening. Admin application actions, that's probably useful. Do I want to know if an update's available? Might be useful. Console is updated. Application update is available and is updated. An admin is added. In my instance, I would like to know this really from the fact of this can be a little bit more public because we're sharing files if you're going to do that. And so as a result, I'd really like to get some more control or warning in case this was compromised or somebody had gained access to it and we're starting to add users. Let me change if this role has been changed, or maybe the admin settings have been changed. I'm not really worried about admin access at the moment. And I'm not worried about that if a console has been changed now. Just check that's not hidden the apply behind my little self image there. So that looks like that has all taken it. So let's just go yes. So it's done that as we've gone along. So all of those things here are put in place. Obviously there seems to be alerts for Drive as well, but I'm not going to be too worried about that for the minute. So let's head on over. Probably for me is admins and users. This is the permissions that we actually have, and let's just have a quick look and see what we can do. So it looks like that we can have a user. So if we could create an admin, we can maybe create a new admin, and this admin, let's not define the role. So what does it allow us to do? It has no management over Drive, but can view some of the settings. Okay, fair enough. Probably not a lot of things I'm likely to want to do that. If I'm creating a new admin, I'm probably just going to give them a role. Now, what I do like to do here is I do actually like to create a local user. At the moment, this is my cloud user. This is okay and really isn't something that I'm too worried about. But sometimes when we can't get to the internet or we've done something, I would much prefer to have a local user. And that local user, maybe we're going to call it, we like probably just call this the Tech Geeks. And we can generate a password up of our choice in here. That password then is going to be stored, we're going to store that, and that's going to give us local access. How do we do that? Instead of going to unifi.ui.com up here, we're actually going to go to it in a web browser, finding its actual IP, which in this instance was 192.168.1.77, and then we'd be able to log in. So let's just complete that. Okay, so I've just generated a password that I'm just going to pop in here. I want to give it super admin access. And now I've created a local user here that I can get into and use anytime. Now we can add plenty more users in here as we go along. And that's going to be managed here. We've got the option here to manage roles. So we could create new roles. I'm not sure that we actually in this device actually have at the moment have a lot of options, which is more really people management and the management of the actual UniFi Drive itself. I'm sure maybe we'll have extra roles in due course. So what we're really wanting to do now is what can we actually do here in users. So a user here we can invite. They have an invitation. And what do we have in settings here? We can change, we can see their username and password at the moment, sorry, their user names at the moment. We can maybe give them an ID if we want to. And this one, file services, allows users to sign in via SME connections and local drive IPs. So this user, for be able to share, to use a share or something like that, then we need to be able to set up a username and password. And this, I believe, is what will then be used for us to actually connect using a mapped drive. So that will be part of a journey of what we're going to create when we actually join this computer to the UNAS as a network drive. And we'll come and see whether it works without this first. But I have a suspicion we're going to need to go in here and actually create a username and password that we're going to pass when we actually log in. But time will tell to see whether I've got that correct or not. And then identity endpoint. So this is where we're going to use the app and just be able to use a link that maybe we've been sent out and then be able to connect with that directly. So we do have some options here by the looks of things that we could integrate this with Active Directory, an LDAP server if we wanted to, or Google Secure, which could be quite nice if you're going to use this more in a business environment and you're maybe using Azure or you've got an Active Directory server. Then we've got an option here to be able to integrate your login details and make it a little bit easier for the user to be able to log in. So that's a first look there at the admins and users. Let's go on. I'm just going to think about probably the next step on here, because otherwise all we're going to do, well, let's just have a quick look. Backups. In the backup here, we haven't really got anything to back up at the moment, so we have got some options here to be able to connect to another NAS, as you can see, a UNAS, to another file server to put files there, or Google Drive, and then we can choose what we want to put there as files. This is something that's probably going to be specific. I might not cover a lot of this or some of this right now because we haven't got any data and we haven't got anything we can actually move and back up. So I'm probably going to think that the next thing we're going to do is actually create a user that has access to files. We're going to map a drive from this Windows computer, and then we're going to work out copying those files to it. And once we've got some files on here, then hopefully we can work out sharing those as well. Okay, so we're going to add in a new user now and start towards seeing what actually gets created as a set of shares. So I really want this user to have access to a file share. I don't really care about it managing this at all. So I'm going to create a new user. I am assuming that potentially this user can already have been created with inside, already have a Ubiquiti account. So I'm just going to assume that and use the account that I already have. All right, so really want to figure out, am I going to have personal space? I don't really want to set up personal space, but what's the idea of this? The idea of personal space is that every user can have their own private store, and then they can have shared drives. I don't need to waste any of the space here for me. I just want to actually set up shared drives because that's what we're going to use this for. So let's have a look. Designated as owner. We can go from here. No other shared drives can be assigned. All shared drives are being assigned to the user. Okay, so right now it looks like I can't actually add anything to this at this stage. So I think we maybe will have to create it at a different stage. So let's just add this user in and see what happens to start with. So the user has been created in here. So I think I possibly might need to go to services. No, services are all fine. So inside services here, we can see how we're going to get to this using a web browser, which we'll have a look at in a moment. How do we get to this using a share? And let's have a look. So again, if you want to do this as an NFS and you want to mount that using a Linux box, then that is an option. Obviously, as we can see here, you could encrypt the drive. A pretty good thing to do at the moment would be to encrypt it, but that is going to have some speed implications, and you've probably got to decide on what data is on there as well, and whether that has a usefulness to you. Maybe just quickly, let's have a look at push notifications. So push notifications here are all about Unifi Drive. So these are things that are actually about the operating system, the application itself, not the operating system. So it's a little bit more. So have we got a failure? Are we starting to become full up? What do we list? So this is all about size, activity, personal drive activated, a sign-in that's failed. Has somebody tried to log in who maybe shouldn't be? Have things been created? Have backups run? Have snapshots run and everything else? Let me just move this away from behind me. And have some of these shares being enabled as well. So most of those things, I'm going to be quite happy with how those are set up at the moment. I don't really need to make any changes on them. But what I want to start doing is start to work out how to create a share. So I want to here, we've got the Tech Geeks has got some space, and this has got some space as well. Well, actually, I want to create a share. I want to create a share. This is going to be called media. I'm going to put all of our YouTube media in here. And I'm not sure I want to enforce a limit on this. You could put a limit on this if we don't want to overrun, but I want to be able to allow this to flex with size. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. Who has access to it? Well, I can choose the user that I just added, and I can set it as an owner. And now I can save that. So now I can have this. As you can see, this was created for the Tech Geeks as a user, because when we first set this up, the user, if you remember, we could see was created in here. and it's in here as well, and it actually has access to its own personal drive if you can see of 15 terabytes again, or basically the limit of the device. I don't need this user to actually have any storage space. And so just to keep this nice and clean, hopefully it's going to allow me, I'm just going to actually remove this space, but it might not allow me to do that. Let's see if I can deactivate it. Yeah, so it's deactivated it, which is great. So now nothing else can go onto it. You can transfer the drive items. That looks pretty cool. So this is really nice. So maybe you had a member of staff that's moved or left and they had their own personal store. You could actually then use this to move all of the files that were there to another location. Again, if you wanted to close down the share in its entirety and then move it. This is a great feature. I don't see this on many NAS drives. But I'm not a NAS buff, but I do see that as a great option. We could download it, reactivate it, but in my instance, I want to actually delete it because I don't want that, or I don't need that to be here. In this instance, again, I don't think I actually need the Unifi's drive here. See if it allows us to get rid of this one here as well, because I don't need any other space. I want to control what is in here myself. So we now have our own storage protection. So we can do some snapshots, which we'll have a look at a bit later on, of what those snapshots are and how they actually work. And again, I can come back and change the user's permissions on here. I can configure my snapshot settings, which I did have already on the other menu. Like I said, we'll have a look at that in a moment. But I've now created a share in here that is ready to put files on it. So let's see if we can actually go ahead and map a drive to this. Okay, so there are a number of ways we can access a share, and I'm doing this on a Windows computer. Principle is sort of the same on a Mac using SMB. But there are two ways of doing this. So I'm going to work with you first to show you the manual way of doing it, and then we can look at using Unifi Identity as a way of logging that on and setting that up automatically. So if we go to storage, and we can see our share here as media, if we actually go to our dashboard shows us what we should actually have here as an option. So if we bring over Windows Explorer, if we want to copy this in my instance, so we're going to bring this over. We're going to right click here on top of my computer. If it doesn't show a map network drive here, you can go on show more options and choose map network drive. You can give that a drive letter, whatever drive letter that would be. And then you can tag on the end here the folder that you have access to. Now you could just map this, and if you have access to the whole drive, you could potentially just map this like this. But I often find that you'll find different network drives mapped to different shared folders, as it makes more of a manageable way to not always be negotiating through. And if you've not got access to certain folders, it makes it a little bit easier. So it's going to reconnect on logon. And often you will probably want it to choose connect using different credentials, because unless you are using that integrated Microsoft or a Google Active Directory or directory link, then it's probably going to pass some slightly different information than you need from your computer. So now before we do this, I'm going to go and just check my user. So my user over here in admin and users, here it is. It's active. I'm going to enable this for file services credentials, and I'm just going to give this a username of Paul. Plenty of passwords that we could try in here if we wanted to, but I'm just going to put one in here. All right, that I'm going to use and save that. Okay, so probably can come back and change that in due course if I wanted to. Let's go back over to our mapped network drive here. And when we push this, it's going to connect, and it's going to ask us for our username, and then it's going to ask us for our password. And I'm going to choose remember credentials because I wanted to keep logging in every time from then. So there we go. It has actually done that. It has mapped our drive. Our drive now has a letter W. So if I open this up and find my W, I can see it here at the top called Media. And this is ready for me to actually put files into it. Now, that's option 1. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just right click on top of here and I'm going to disconnect the drive. And there we go. The second option is when we added this user, the user will have been sent an email. In that email, it said accept the details. The email that was sent would look something like this. You've been invited to the NAS, and obviously this is great if you maybe got multiple NAS. Click here to install the endpoint, or click here to download your credentials. If you haven't already got the Unifi Identity App, then you're going to grab and install that. Once it's installed, you then basically click on the load credential link. When you click on the load credential link, essentially it takes you to a web page which asks you what you're doing. You choose to load the credentials. So when you choose load credentials, this will actually put it into your ID, your Unifi identity. As you can see, I've already added this credential in here. So then basically the Unifi box pops up like this. Okay, so what you'll see here is my little identity app has now loaded its credentials, and it wants to just basically say, do you want me to automatically integrate this with File Explorer? And it's essentially going to do what I've already done. So let me just click that, and it has now actually set that up. So let's just pop over to the larger screen again. And if we now look in Windows Explorer under our PC again, we should actually find our media drive has been mapped for us again here under W. So super simple, same as it did before, but it just did that bit for us. So if you want to do it in 2 ways, you either can use Unifi Identity, and then you don't need to create anything in this section here, or you can just create users that are users that don't have to be activated with inside that. So it will work out whichever way, and you'll probably find you'll use a combination of both. So now we've got that share available, we can actually start moving data to it. I'm probably going to add another share on here. I'm just going to call this Kids Media. It doesn't want a space in it, so let's just make it look like that. Don't want a storage limit on it. Want to again give myself permissions for it, and I'm going to add that. And that's added there now. So if I was probably to do the same here, I could create another mapped drive if I wanted to. Let's just see what happens if we actually just create this to the entity itself. So let's just have a little look and see what will happen here. So interestingly, I want to just see whether this will remember who I am. So it won't. So it's wanting to do this again with identity. So I've created a new share and I've got access to it. So let me just try my identity app. And just see if there are some options in here for it to now add in that other drive, because we've now essentially shared a new drive with it, whether there's a way that that's actually going to add that automatically into here for me. So let's just have a little look and see. It has, in fact, it's very cleverly done it. Now I actually created it. You can see that it's automatically now created a new drive for me, or a new drive with a new letter. So it is a really, really neat way of doing it. As we add the shares, we can see them there. So I'm going to actually start up some file moving, because I'm going to move it off an old Western Digital NAS into here. I don't think it's going to work that fast because I'm going to have to pull it to this machine and out. Everything should run at about 1 gig, and there's quite a lot of files to move. But I'm just going to at least set that into motion, and then we'll have some folders and things that we can have a look at and try in a little bit. So hopefully that's good at giving you a bit of a start of an idea of creating the shares, how to actually map them to a computer, to a Windows machine, and then we'll be able to have a look a little bit later on of how we might be able to access these on our mobile device, how we can access them from a web browser from wherever we are as well. Okay, so this has been running a few days, and I have copied a whole bunch of data over. Haven't upgraded because I haven't put it into the rack yet, so I haven't moved it from the 1 gig connection. All the things that I was copying across from only ran at 1 gig anyway, so it wasn't going to give me any benefit at this initial stage. Now it's on here and I can move to devices connected to 10 gig. I'll move it there. So obviously just looking at the dashboard, we can see how much space we've actually consumed now of that. If we want to see what's happening, obviously what's going on at that time, we can expand that out, or we can actually have a look in the control plane here, and have a little bit more look at the storage and see everything that's going on again that we've seen. Now, before I head on to some of the other bits, I want to just reiterate a few things that I had tried earlier, and I know that I did cover, so I'm sorry if there's a little bit of repetition, but it's a few things that I have noticed here very specifically. So, if we start here by looking at the users that we create, I want to be very clear here that you can create a user. So here we can create a new user, and we can put an email address in. That will use, if they're not already set up, it'll invite them to create an account at unifi.ui.com, and it will actually set them up as a user for this. At that point, if they don't install the Unifi Identity App on the computer, they won't be able to map a drive or mount a drive and get at the share. So that's something very significant. There are the two things in here. So it's really, really important if I find a user that's here already. So I find this user here. What's super important, if you don't want to use the Unifi Identity App, then you must make sure that you have got a tick box in File Services Credentials and that you set up a username and password for that. That is going to allow a local user to map a drive and actually therefore get access to it locally. If you don't do that, that's not a problem, but they do need to get the Unifi Identity App, which is this little app here. And then that can actually authorize them to join the drive automatically. Now, a couple of other things that I've noticed on this, and it's a bit of a mixed bag here of how it works. So let's have a look at some map drives. I've got some map drives that I've got in here at the moment. Now, I have manually mapped these drives, because I have chosen, or for some of these I have chosen, I needed it to be on a specific drive letter here because I use Premiere Pro and I've got everything mapped through that drive letter. So if I disconnect this drive, and then I can go back to my Unifi Identity App, all right, and I can choose to auto turn on drive mapping. What this will actually do, and you'll have seen this before when I've done this, is, let's just move this over here so we can see this properly, is it will actually create automatic shares down here, and it will actually remap the drives. Now, I find that often this happens every time you log on if your computer's locked, and it does take a couple of moments for it to realize what it needs to map, and it will then go and map the drive. Now, there is nothing in here that allows you to control what drive letter it actually uses to map. And this can become a little bit of a frustration. So what I actually found was if I left this on and then there was a drive that I wanted to actually manually map its drive letter to, each time I logged on, the app here would remap the drive again with a different letter. So I'd actually have multiple mapped drives with different letters. So it is much better to do it individually if you want to control the actual drive letter that's being used. But if you're not worried about the actual drive letter that's being used, then doesn't really matter too much how you go about that. It does, like I said, take a few moments to actually update. I'll just try and see. I'm not sure whether it's going to do it now. Auto integrate is running. I think I saw it every maybe 4 or 5 minutes actually map the drive. So it would end up there with 2. So I can obviously come back here and I can map my drive now. I wanted to give this a drive letter of X. I have actually already got this saved in here, so I wanted to map this up here. And this will now map my drive with an X. But at the same time, maybe a little bit later on in the video I'll show you, and I'll leave this here. It'll have actually come back and remapped these. So I really wanted to cover those things. If you want to get access to a drive and you want to do it manually and control the drive letter, then you must make sure that in settings you've got file services credentials ticked and that you've set a username and password. If you're going to use the Unifi Identity App installed on a computer, then great, and then you don't need to have that ticked, then it will auto map. What you then can find on your phone, so if I just go over and actually look at this, if you've got the Unifi Identity App on your phone, what can actually happen is you can be sent an email, so you can open that email on your phone, follow the let me just get the record going on here. Follow the link on there that says set up for Unifi Entity, or load your credentials, and your credentials will actually be loaded and you will then have file access. And this doesn't have to be local. I've tested this on 5G connection. This will map its way back to these folders and actually will map their way back in even over another connection when you're outside. So your NAS is in your local network. You haven't done any port forwards or anything else like that, but you then can actually get to all of these files, and you can actually open up some of these files if they're not too large as well. So it's pretty cool for being able to do it this way round using the app, and I'm sure that will be developed a little bit further. So I just wanted to show you some of those bits that I've spotted as we've gone along, and now I want to cover some things like the snapshots and sharing the links as well. Okay, so I want to start by talking a little bit about snapshots. Now, I'm not totally convinced about this yet, and let me explain why. So what is the idea of a snapshot? The idea of a snapshot is it's going to create essentially another image or another backup or a snap of the data that you actually have on this NAS. Now, that does have some level of usefulness if we are talking about maybe being able to restore a set of files or content that changed or was deleted by accident. So we can have a snapshot of that point in time from yesterday or whatever, and so we can restore all of that data as it was. So that does have a balance. What we don't see in the UNAS Pro at this moment in time is being able to have different volumes made up of different drives. So what do I mean by that? Well, at the moment, say we've only got 3 hard drives in here, but say we had 7 hard drives in here. Maybe I could create 4 of those hard drives. They could be larger drives but slower drives, and they were going to create or keep another set of data, another image of what I'm doing. And then we could have for 3 other drives that were faster, and that was my day-to-day data. Then what could happen is that I could actually take a snapshot of my working data and put it into my archive data. Because I've got different volumes, I'm now spreading it across the fault tolerance. At the moment, if I create a snapshot, I'm creating a snapshot onto the same RAID array. If that RAID array fails, all of my data loses. Now, yes, I know we're in RAID 5, and we can lose 1 drive out of that and it still function, but there are still possibilities and there still are chances that that data could, or those drives could fail. So realistically, if we're going to use 1 unit to give us some level of fault tolerance, I know we've got things like the power to think about, we've only got a single power supply, all of those bits, but if we're thinking about our data, at the moment we don't have that ability to have multiple volumes. Now, I'm sure that that will come in due course. Multiple volumes would be a great add-on to be able to control how we have the data around and how it's spread around. So, but at the moment, snapshots are realistically for me allowing me to get an instant backup or a refresh of what happened yesterday or the day before or something like that. So snapshots will happen, but even though this might say on here something's happening, for the first time, if we were to look at this one, until I hit my apply button down here, the snapshots won't be creating. Now it says you can have a total of 4,096 snapshots, which is great, but obviously it depends on the size of your drives and the data that you're actually imaging and how much it is going to take. So on this one here, I've set it as 4, and then we'll have a look at what that snapshot looks like and what we can do with it once it's created after tomorrow. But you can set up a schedule on there. I presume if I don't turn off the schedule, then nothing's actually running. I can obviously set my times and everything else like that, and that is my snapshot. Like I said, it's going to create an image of today's data, and then we can have a look when we've created one and see what options we are on the restoration around that. All right, so I've left the snapshot to run overnight, and now if I had this problem, I'm sure that everybody else will have this problem. So we can see that it ran here, see that it's working. Beyond this, I couldn't actually quite work out what I needed to do. So I went to settings and we go to snapshots, and I can see I've got a snapshot here, but there isn't anything to click. It says that one of the 4 snapshots being created. All I have an option over here is to delete snapshots. So again, none of this seemed to quite make sense to me, and it was only by accident that I spotted this, and everybody else probably, oh look, we knew how to do this, but if I had this, probably many other people will have the same. So if you've got snapshots running, it is actually pretty neat in the way this has been set up. If you go to your file share, and even here you can see they've got snapshots running, you can see everything else. There's nothing here to suggest that double clicking is worthwhile, but I found if you double click this actually now lists you the folder. But the key thing is to actually look at what's up here. It says current version. So this is the real-time version that's running. But my version from yesterday is the one that's in here. And so actually, in fact, I can find my way in here to a specific folder. All right. And from within inside here, I now have options to restore just this file. And so as it builds more snapshots, you'll have more of the versions here. So I can go back to my current one here, and then I can go back to my other one here, which is the one that was taken yesterday. So obviously what this doesn't do, it doesn't give us fault tolerance if the drives fail, but this does give us tolerance if people have deleted stuff they shouldn't have, if some data became corrupted, potentially if it became encrypted. If from cryptoware or something like that, you could restore that whole shared drive and the data in it back again. So hopefully that helps you find your way around how the snapshots work. So you actually just need to go into your actual share that you've set up, and you'll then be able to use this current option here, which will allow you to go back and see what it is. So go back into the folder that you were working on before or whatever like this, and it will allow you to flick through the different versions. So pretty cool, but hopefully that helps you find and use snapshots once they've been taken. Okay, so in this section of the video, I just want to show you briefly about backing up your data. Now, in the firmware version I'm running, for some reason this doesn't totally work. It could be part of my Google Drive, I'm not totally sure. So I'm just going to walk you through. So we've obviously gone to settings. Because we've done snapshots so far, we want to actually can we get data off this to a secondary device or another location? That's going to give us even more fault tolerance. So we've gone to settings, we've chosen backups, and we can choose data to back up. This is pretty cool. We can choose a folder or a group of folders that we want to back up and choose select. Then we can choose how do we want to back this up. We can have a remote UNAS. This probably I think needs to be involved in Site Manager. It could be at another location if you created a VPN and got Ubiquiti equipment or other equipment and give you VPN, or it could be a second one in different location of your building. That will apply in here, and you could choose that. Obviously I don't have one of those. Or we could do a CIFS or SMB server. So again, if we've got something that's giving SMB share, then we can put our correct names in here, and then we can offload the data. In my instance, we're going to do a Google Drive. It's really simple. We're going to link our account. I do suggest the way that you actually do this is from a computer, not using the QR on a mobile. So all we need to do is just follow through to the Google page and authenticate. Choose the account we want to authenticate against. Then we're just going to need to tick the box here that says we want the UniFi Drive to be able to create a folder. It creates a folder inside your drive, your Google Drive, so that the data actually can go in there. So now for me, this is as far as I can get. So I can see that this is all created, but down here there should be an option now that actually is not grayed out for me to actually create a schedule that tells me how often do I want this data to back up. And unfortunately that I don't have as an option. So I'm not quite sure why that is. I will try another way here just in case. So here again, I don't have the option even using a different drive. So I'm presuming that it's maybe something to do with my account. I don't have a full paid for or company Google Drive, so it could be something to do with that, or it could be the firmware that I'm running. But essentially you just need to choose your schedule down here, and a folder will appear in Google Drive, and then your contents will be in there. I know that there have been a few firmware issues around this. Some people have found that they've had to go to folder replacement, which is going to put a whole new copy on there each time to make it work. Others have found that just using folder update so that it updates any changes that are there and puts new stuff up there can work for them. So I think this is probably still something that is in development. I'm looking forward to seeing something like OneDrive in here. That would be pretty good in due course, and I'm sure that we'll see that in coming firmware. So that's how we're really going to work on being able to get stuff off this box to another location. Fairly restricted at the moment, but I do think we're going to see some greater options coming in further firmware. So we're probably reaching one of the final stages of what we've been going through with this UNAS, and that's how do we share files or folders outside the organization that we're in, i.e. away from our local area network. What if we've got people in a remote location, they haven't got VPN, and can we just share the files with them? Yes, we can, and that is it's got a really good set of basic features in here. So if we were to go into here, let's just take an example. We can do it on a file level, or we can do it on a folder. So if we were to right click on top of this file here, we've got an option to share link, but let me just show you what we can do with a folder here. So we can share the link, and so I already shared this in a test, so let me just delete this link away. All right, so we've got three main options here. We can set an expiration date, maybe that's tomorrow. We can set how many times this can be used, and we can set a password if we want to. We can do all of these or none of these if we want to. So I'm just going to put a basic password in there. All right, and I'm going to create and copy the link. We've now got an option to have a normal link. We could put in an email to somebody, or a QR code. We could download the QR code. So if we just open up, if I just copy that link and open up our web browser and paste that link in, it should now ask us for our password. We can now put the password in, and now we've got access to being able to download these files or just preview what was in there. So super easy solution that's there. What we now obviously have is the ability to see what's going on with that. If we were to go back into settings here and shared links, we can actually see all the links that we've created. This one has got a day left on it, but there's no more access times left on it because we gave only one. So if we were actually to go back and create a new window and paste that link back in again, we're actually going to find that we're going to be told that access has reach the maximum number of times that it can be used. So a great, simple, easy to use feature that allows us to share this files or folders outside of our organization. UNAS just needs to be connected to the internet, needs to be connected to unifi.ui.com, and obviously your internet connection needs to be active for it to work. There is then one other way that we could give people access to it, and that is to directly access the UNAS over the internet connection. Now, this will mean that you need to think about your security. It will need you need to set a port forward up on your router to forward through. So if we just go back to settings here, and again go to services, this actually shows us here what service it would be, which is this is the IP address here of the actual UNAS. So you are going to set a port forwarder up. This probably lives on port 443, so SSL. So you're going to need to set a port forwarder up on your router to port forward to this IP address on port 443. And then if I was to actually go there, using the public IP address, I could then log in with whatever details I had set up at unifi.ui.com. So the username and password details that we'd set up in here for the user in here for essentially their Unifi account would then allow them to log in, and once they had actually then logged in, they would be able to look around the device. So let's just see if I can log in with one of the accounts that I've got and show you what they would see. Okay, so let me see if I have my login details. Now, just before we do this, I'll just show you something that I've found that is interesting. So if I was to log in here now, this will try potentially and use my full, if I put an email address in, it's going to use my full unifi.ui.com account. And it's then going to see whether I am an administrator for this device. And because the user I want to log into, this one here, isn't the administrator, it'll tell me I don't have permission. I just wanted to have access to the drive and the folders as if all it was doing is browsing the NAS. So what you actually need to make sure is in that instance you've enabled the services option for that user, which is this one here, and you've set a password for it. So Paul iOS is the username here that we've got. So if I now go back over here and log in with those credentials, it knows that I'm doing something locally on the machine itself. So like I said, I could be outside of the network when I do this. I'm just using the internet connection. Sometimes in Firefox it just doesn't seem to be totally happy of loading. I can see all my shares and I can start browsing through my shares if I want to, just like I had done before and being able to get into them. So I can do all of my things, like I can download from here, I can copy, I can share the links. So I can do this in a web browser as an option for what I've got. You also have the options down here then to manage your own profile. So you can manage anything that's been shared with you, the services that are available, but you can also manage your profile in here if it's been set up for you by an administrator. So if you were to open that up, I would consider it very carefully. If you're going to open that up to the internet, that you make sure your usernames and passwords are strong, because I'm sure it won't take long before somebody find a way around. You're better off making this visible over a VPN or just for people inside the network. But hopefully that gives you those two ways. The two ways is actually doing the proper shared links. The second way is to give people access to the web browser interface over the internet as a way of being able to get to those files. Okay, so in this section, I just want to quickly look about what can we do to extend the RAID that we have, or increase the storage space. So just to remind us where we went from settings, which is just down here behind my image. There you go, settings, chose control plane, went to storage. It shows us what's in here. I've not filled all of the drives. You can see I've got 3 drives in here, 8 terabytes each. In a RAID 5, so we lose one of those hard drives in our usable space. So we have 16 terabytes of usable space. What I'm going to do now is add another drive to this setup. They can be of multiple sizes. It's probably more coherent if you do them of the same size, but see how you go. We're going to do this with another Iron Wolf NAS drive, which is the same as what I've got in here. So I've taken out one of the trays. I did this in real time, so the unit is still actually running. I'm just going to pop that in there. Not you necessarily see me actually do that. You put it in from one side. You saw me in the other videos clamping it in place. and that's all actually ready to go. So what I'm hoping now, we're going to go and pop this in the hard drive, into one of the hard drive bays that's not being used, and hopefully this will update on the screen, give you some options of what we can do next with it. Okay, so I've just popped that hard drive in. Didn't turn the machine off at all, didn't turn the UNAS off at all, and I've just refreshed the page up here. And then you can actually now see, let's let that page refresh, but you can actually now see I've got 4 drives. I put the drive into this bay here. Now, by default, you can actually see that this is off expanding the hard drive space, but we do have some options if we wanted to. We could change this around and we could turn this into a hot spare. So at the moment we had 3 drives giving us 16 terabytes of usable space. What if one of those failed? Well, it will carry on, but if we had a hot spare, that hot spare would swap into place and give us our fault tolerance again, and then we could take that failed one out and replace it. So that is another option that you could do. Then it would stop rebuilding this at that point. We have got this with on basic protection at the moment. So let's just have 2 are required for RAID 1 or RAID 5, which is fine. Higher protection. So you do have some other options to go into here, which it says half of your drives are used, at least 4 are required for RAID 1.0. So that would be a mirror. It would join them together and do a mirror, but I'm happy with the RAID 5 that I've got, and as you can see with the size that I've got, it's going to take over probably about a day. I reckon it'll take probably a day and a half, depending on how much data is written around, on and off during that period of time. Everything is still fully usable. I don't want to turn it off. That will potentially give us some issues, but our new storage space will now have increased to 24 terabytes from 16. So this is where, when you probably want to choose how many drives, there is a cost point, but you want to think over long term, because obviously if you fill all the drive bays, the only option you've got really is to take drives out, move data off, and move data back. So try and get it right at the beginning. So hopefully that's a look at what you can do with expanding part of your array as well. And so obviously if we go back to storage and files, or if we have a look on the dashboard here, we can see that at the moment it still tells us we've only got 16 terabytes of usable space, but we can see over here that it is actually currently expanding it, and we'll obviously be pretty busy for a while, and then once it has actually expanded that RAID array, all of those 4 drives will be in use, and we will then have a larger usable space. But if we go back, so hopefully it allows us to go back a couple of pages here, or I'm just going to need to just change out where, let's move this slightly so I can get to the settings button down here, and just go to control plane, and again have a look at our storage space that is there. And we can see that available storage has increased now, and we've lost some time on here, which is quite good, but at this moment in time we still only have 16 terabytes of use, because we can't do anything till it is fully expanded. We'll have a look in a day or so's time once that's fully expanded, so you can actually see that final bit of what we're doing with the UNAS here. Okay, so it took around about 26 hours. During that time we were moving quite a lot of footage on and off for some of our YouTube videos that we were making, which probably had some bearing on how fast it was actually running, but you can now see it shows us 24 terabytes of usable space. We'd say that the fans did run up to about 80% when it was building, and obviously that increased the sound, so just be aware of that, but it was only for that period of time. So hopefully this video has been useful. I do want to just quickly show you some interesting things. If you do have the little identity app and map drives, it gets a little bit out of control here. I found, so this gave up after trying to map the drive 26 times. So I've turned the auto mapping off and I just manually map it. So maybe a little bit bug there that will be sorted in due course. But generally, hopefully you can see there's some good potential in this. Maybe there's a few bits that it's missing in some features that some of the more established NAS providers have. But I think that this is something that is coming of age. Maybe it's still just in its early teens, but it is growing. We've run this for about 3 weeks now, and it's been really successful and usable. Does everything that we need and is simple to connect, as in with the whole Ubiquiti side of things working. So head on over to our YouTube channel. We've got plenty more how-to guides, performance reviews, and everything else over there that could be useful. So why don't you head there, subscribe, and stay up to date.